The final battle for Haven lasted exactly 7 minutes and changed the galaxy forever. As the massive Federation armada approached the human sanctuary, the 50,000 awakened humans aboard the station did something that no military strategist could have predicted. They did not prepare weapons or defensive barriers. Instead, they sat down in meditation circles throughout the station and began to dream. They dreamed of a galaxy where war was impossible, where different species worked together instead of fighting, where knowledge was shared freely and no one lived in fear. Then they decided their dreams should be real. The effect rippled outward from Haven at faster than light speed, rewriting reality as it went. Federation weapons transformed into construction tools. Military ships became research vessels filled with libraries and laboratories. Soldiers found themselves wearing the uniforms of teachers, doctors, and engineers. Most importantly, the deep programming that made the alien species see humans as inferior simply stopped working. For the first time in 8 centuries, aliens looked at humans and saw them as they truly were, beings of incredible power and unlimited potential. Admiral Zarian stood on his flagship's bridge, staring at readouts that told him his dreadnought was now a hospital ship. His weapons had become medical scanners. His crew had become doctors and nurses, and they were all somehow completely happy about this transformation. "This is impossible," he whispered, but even as he said it, he realized he no longer believed it was impossible. The humans had shown him a better way to exist, and part of him was grateful for it. Across the galaxy, the war ended not with surrender or defeat, but with awakening. Billions of alien beings suddenly understood that the conflict had been based on lies and fear. They saw clearly that cooperation would make everyone stronger and happier. On Haven, Ji-Hai Choi stood at the observation deck, watching as Federation ships peacefully docked with the station. Former enemies were stepping aboard as visitors, curious to learn about human abilities and eager to share their own knowledge. "Is it really over?" asked Hyunwoo, joining her at the window. "The war is over," Ji-Hee replied. "But everything else is just beginning." She was right. With the fighting ended, humanity faced a new challenge: what to do with their power. Some awakened humans wanted to rule the galaxy as revenge for centuries of oppression. Others insisted on complete equality for all species. The debate was settled when In-Suk Yoon, an elderly philosopher who had awakened late in life, proposed a radical solution. "We should not rule the galaxy," she said during a gathering of human leaders on Haven. "We should teach it." In-Suk had spent decades studying different forms of government and social organization. She understood that power concentrated in the hands of any single group, even humans, would eventually lead to corruption and conflict. "Our abilities work best when we use them to help others realize their own potential," she continued. "Instead of controlling reality for other species, we should teach them how to expand their own relationship with reality." This philosophy became the foundation of the new galactic order. Humans established the Academy of Infinite Possibility, a network of schools where any species could learn to push beyond their perceived limitations. He Young Kang designed the Academy's first campus on a planet she created specifically for education. The world existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, with different areas optimized for different types of learning. Physics students could study in regions where the laws of science were visible and manipulable. Artists could work in spaces where imagination took physical form. Philosophers could debate in environments where abstract concepts became tangible. The Academy's first alien student was Admiral Zarian himself. The former military commander had become fascinated by human abilities during the final battle. He wanted to understand how humans could rewrite reality with such ease. "Your species manipulates matter and energy," He Young explained to him during one of his lessons. "But humans work with something more fundamental. We manipulate the underlying information that tells reality how to behave." She showed him how human consciousness could access what she called the source code of the universe. While alien abilities worked within existing programs, humans could edit the programs themselves. "But why can only humans do this?" Zarian asked. "That's not true," He Young replied. "Any consciousness can learn to do this. The difference is that humans were forced to rediscover these abilities recently, so we approach them with fresh minds. Your species have been using reality warping for millennia, but you've been limiting yourselves with assumptions about what's possible. Under human guidance, Zarian learned to expand his own abilities beyond anything he had thought possible. Instead of just reshaping matter, He learned to alter the properties of space and time. Instead of moving objects with his mind, he learned to convince objects to move themselves. The transformation was not limited to individuals. Entire alien civilizations began to evolve as they learned human techniques. The crystalline Valari discovered they could exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. The gaseous Nethrim learned to phase between dimensions at will. The Korthax found they could regenerate from any injury by deciding they had never been harmed. But the most dramatic changes came from the most unexpected source. The children. Byung-ho. Song had been working as a healer when the war ended, using his abilities to cure diseases and repair injuries. But in the peaceful galaxy that followed, he discovered something remarkable about the next generation. Children who grew up learning about human abilities from birth were not limited by the assumptions that constrained adults. They treated reality warping as natural as walking or talking, and their capabilities far exceeded anything seen in previous generations. Human children created imaginary friends who became real people with full lives and personalities. Alien children learned to shapeshift not just their bodies, but their fundamental nature, becoming living examples of different physical laws. Mixed groups of children from different species worked together to invent new forms of matter and energy. They're not just learning to use reality warping abilities. Byung-ho reported to the Academy's governing council. They're evolving beyond the need for such abilities. They're becoming something new. The children were developing what human researchers called natural reality integration. Instead of manipulating the universe from outside, they were becoming part of the universe's creative process. Reality itself was beginning to evolve, becoming more flexible and responsive to conscious intention. This evolution was accelerated by the Academy's most ambitious project, the Reality Council. Led by Tae-min Lee, who had been elected as the first human chancellor of the reformed Galactic Union, the council included representatives from every known species, and several that had been created through collaborative effort. The Reality Council did not govern in the traditional sense. Instead, it guided the galaxy's development, helping different worlds and species explore their potential while preventing conflicts from arising. Our job is not to control, Tae-min explained to the council during one of their sessions. Our job is to make sure everyone has the freedom and resources to become whatever they're capable of becoming. This philosophy led to the creation of infinite diversity across the galaxy. Some worlds became centers of artistic expression where entire planets were living works of art. Others focused on scientific research, pushing the boundaries of what was possible to discover. Still others became philosophical centers where beings from different realities gathered to share wisdom. The old boundaries between species began to blur as individuals chose to modify themselves in ways that transcended their original biology. Former Korthax warriors became energy beings like the Luminals. Ex-Zephyrians developed the collective consciousness abilities of the Nethrim. Humans experimented with crystal bodies like the Valari. But perhaps the greatest achievement of the new era was the end of scarcity itself. With reality warping abilities becoming commonplace, the basic problems that had driven conflict for millennia simply disappeared. Food could be created from imagination. Shelter could be built from crystallized thoughts. Energy could be drawn from the quantum vacuum itself. Disease became a choice rather than an affliction, as healers like Byung-ho taught others to convince their bodies to maintain perfect health. So-young Park, who had discovered the original genetic suppression that started humanity's awakening, established the Museum of Lost Potential. The museum preserved the memory of what the galaxy had been like under the old system of scarcity and conflict, ensuring that future generations would understand the value of what they had gained. Never forget that abundance is not natural, she told visitors to the museum. It exists because people chose to create it, and it will only continue to exist as long as people continue to choose cooperation over competition. The museum's most popular exhibit was a recreation of pre-awakening human society, showing how humans had lived when they believed they were powerless. Many young visitors found it hard to believe that any intelligent species could accept such limitations. But the museum also displayed the histories of all the alien species, showing how each had overcome their own limitations to achieve their current abilities. The Federation's Grand Fleet assembled at the edge of human space, a sight that had not been seen since the last Galactic War 300 years ago. 5,000 ships from all 5 alien species, armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Admiral Zerion of the Korthax Command watched the human colonies through his ship's sensors. Intelligence reports said there were only 200,000 awakened humans, scattered across 50 worlds. Even with their strange abilities, they could not possibly stand against the might of the entire Federation. "Begin the cleansing," he commanded. The first target was Kepler Station, where Dong Hyun-yoon had been teaching other humans about their ancient history. 300 Federation warships surrounded the station, ready to demonstrate what happened to humans who refused to submit to alien authority. "Surrender immediately," Admiral Zerion broadcast to the station. "You are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Your primitive abilities cannot protect you from the combined might of the Federation." On Kepler Station, Dong Hyun stood in the command center with 30 other awakened humans. They could see the massive fleet through the windows, guns trained on their small outpost. "What do we do?" asked one of the younger humans, fear clear in his voice. Dong Hyun smiled calmly. "We remind them who we really are." The 30 humans joined hands in a circle. They thought about the ancient records Dong Hyun had discovered. They remembered that their ancestors had been masters of reality, capable of reshaping entire star systems with their will. "We are not victims," Dong Hyun said softly. "We are not primitives. We are the children of gods, and it's time we acted like it." The Federation fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the station. The attack was powerful enough to destroy a small moon, but the weapons never reached their target. As they approached the station, they simply stopped existing. The humans had decided that hostile weapons could not function in their space. Reality obeyed their decision. Admiral Zerion stared at his displays in disbelief. "What happened to our weapons?" "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "our targeting computers say the weapons fired successfully and hit the target. But our sensors show no explosions, no damage, nothing." "Fire again." The second attack failed the same way. So did the third. The Federation ships could launch their weapons. But the moment those weapons entered the space around Kepler Station, they ceased to exist. Then the humans counterattacked. Dong Hyun and his companions decided that the Federation ships were not real threats. They were just images, holograms that could not actually harm anyone. Reality accepted this interpretation and began to treat the warships as illusions. The ships' hulls became transparent. Their engines stopped working because imaginary ships do not need propulsion. Their crews found themselves unable to operate controls that had become as insubstantial as dreams. Within minutes, the entire attack fleet was drifting helplessly in space, their vessels reduced to ghostly outlines that could not affect the physical world. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Zerion, as his flagship's bulkheads became see-through. "This violates every law of physics." "No," came Dong Hyun's voice over the communication system, somehow reaching every ship simultaneously. "This violates every law you thought you understood. But reality has much bigger laws than the ones in your textbooks." News of the Kepler Station victory spread instantly across human space. Ha-young Kim had established a quantum communication network that allowed awakened humans to share information instantaneously across any distance. She'd convinced reality that space was no obstacle to human communication. The victory inspired awakened humans everywhere. On New Osaka Colony, Sang-woo Choi faced a different kind of attack. The Federation had sent Zephyrian mind control specialists to turn the human colonists against each other. Sang-woo had been a peaceful man before his awakening. He taught children and tended to a small garden. But when he saw alien mind controllers trying to corrupt human thoughts, something awakened in him that was far from peaceful. He walked calmly into the middle of the Zephyrian assault team and made a simple decision. He decided that violence was pointless because everyone in the area was already on the same side. The effect was immediate and absolute. The Zephyrian soldiers looked around in confusion as their minds were flooded with certainty that they were fighting alongside the humans, not against them. Their weapons became tools for construction rather than destruction. Their battle plans transformed into blueprints for building schools and hospitals. Within an hour, the invasion force was working with the colonists to improve their settlement, completely convinced that this had always been their mission. "What did you do to them?" asked Eugene Park, an artist who had arrived to help defend the colony. I reminded them of the truth they had forgotten, Sang-woo replied. Deep down, all intelligent beings want peace and cooperation. I just made that truth more real than their programming for violence. Yujin was amazed. Her own abilities ran in a different direction. She could create living constructs from pure imagination, bringing her artwork to life with personalities and goals of their own. As Federation attacks intensified across human space, Yujin found herself creating entire armies of artistic creatures. Painted soldiers who fought with weapons made of light and color, sculpted warriors who could reshape themselves to counter any threat, living murals that could transport humans instantly to safety. But her greatest creation was the Garden of Ideas, a pocket dimension where human thoughts took physical form. Federation forces that entered the garden found themselves confronting their own fears and doubts made manifest, while humans found their hopes and dreams becoming real around them. The war was taking on a surreal quality that left alien military strategists completely baffled. How do you fight an enemy that can decide your weapons do not exist? How do you plan an attack when the battlefield itself might transform based on human imagination? Kyungmin Lee had become the Resistance's chief strategist, but his methods bore no resemblance to traditional military planning. Instead of studying troop movements and supply lines, he manipulated probability itself. The Federation fleet approaching Sector 7 has a 97% chance of victory, he told Minho during one of their strategy sessions. But I can change that. Kyungmin focused his abilities on the quantum level, adjusting the probability waves that determined how reality unfolded. Under his influence, the Federation fleet's certain victory became a statistical impossibility. Their ships suffered cascade failures at exactly the wrong moments. Their commanders made inexplicably poor decisions. Their communication systems failed at critical junctures, not through sabotage or attack, but because the universe itself had decided that their success was simply too unlikely to occur. The Federation's response was to deploy their ultimate weapon: reality bombs designed to erase entire solar systems from existence. If they could not defeat the humans, they would eliminate them completely. The first reality bomb was dropped on the Tau Ceti system, where a major human colony had refused to surrender. The weapon activated successfully, creating a sphere of absolute nothingness that expanded at light speed. For a moment, it seemed like the Federation had found a way to counter human abilities. The colony, along with its star and planets, began to disappear as if it had never existed. But then something unprecedented happened. Humans across the galaxy felt the attack through Ha-Young's quantum communication network. Thousands of awakened humans simultaneously focused their will on a single purpose: the attack must not succeed. Reality found itself caught between two competing commands. The reality bomb insisted that Tau Ceti had never existed, but thousands of human minds insisted with absolute certainty that it must exist and must continue to exist. The bomb's effect reversed. Not only did Tau Ceti return to existence, but it came back improved. The planets were more habitable, the star burned more steadily, and the human colony had grown larger and more prosperous than before. The Federation commanders stared at their instruments in shock. Their most powerful weapon had not just failed, it had made their target stronger. "Sir," reported a Valari technician to Admiral Zarion, "the reality bomb seems to have upgraded the human colony." "That's impossible." "Yes, sir. But it happened anyway." Taemin Lee chose that moment to broadcast a message to every Federation vessel in the galaxy. His voice reached them despite their communications being offline, because he had decided that important truths should always be heard. "You cannot destroy us," he said calmly. "Every weapon you use against us only proves that we are beyond your ability to harm. Every attack you make teaches us more about our own power." He paused, letting his words sink in across thousands of alien crews. "But we are not your enemies. We never were. You made us your enemies by lying to us, enslaving us, trying to eliminate us. But even now, even after everything you have done, we offer you a choice. Surrender now and we will forgive you. Continue this war, and we will show you what humans can really do when we stop holding back." The threat was not delivered with anger or hatred. Taemin's voice carried only sadness for what might be necessary. Across the Federation fleet, alien commanders faced an impossible decision. Minho Seo had been planning the resistance for months before the Federation made its move. As a former military officer turned smuggler, he had contacts throughout human space. When the first protective custody orders came through, he was ready. "They're calling it the Human Safety Initiative," he told the gathered crowd in an abandoned mining facility on Titan Station. "They say they want to study our new abilities to make sure we don't hurt ourselves or others." A bitter laugh rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew what happened to humans who were taken for study. They disappeared into Federation research facilities and were never seen again. "They're scared," said Ha Young Kim, a young communications specialist who had recently discovered she could interface directly with quantum networks, using only her mind. "The alien governments are realizing they can't control us anymore." Ha Young had been monitoring Federation communications for weeks. The alien species were in panic mode. Their scientific advisors were telling them that human abilities operated on principles they did not understand. Traditional reality warping worked within the existing laws of physics. Human abilities seemed to rewrite those laws entirely. "I intercepted a message from the Luminal High Command," He Young continued. "They're calling us reality cancer because we spread chaos wherever we go." "Good," growled Wu Jin Kang from the back of the group. "Let them be afraid." Wu Jin had become a legend among awakened humans after single-handedly defending 3 colonies from Federation attack forces. His ability to enhance his physical capabilities and create energy barriers had turned him into a one-man army. But Min Ho knew that individual heroics would not be enough. The Federation had millions of ships and trillions of soldiers. Humans were vastly outnumbered even with their new abilities. "We need to be smart about this," Min Ho said. "We can't fight them in the open, not yet. We need safe places to gather, train, and learn to use our abilities properly." That was where Junseok Lim came in. The former Federation scientist had been studying human abilities since the first cases appeared. His research had revealed something extraordinary. Human consciousness works differently than alien consciousness, Junseok explained to the group. Aliens manipulate reality by understanding it. They study the laws of physics and learn to bend them, but humans don't bend laws, we replace them. He projected a hologram showing brain scans of humans using their abilities. The patterns were unlike anything seen in alien reality warpers. When a Korthax moves an object with his mind, his brain calculates trajectory, mass, and force. When a human moves an object, their brain simply decides the object should be somewhere else. The universe complies because human consciousness is somehow fundamental to reality itself. This explained why human abilities were so unpredictable and powerful. Aliens had to work within existing limitations. Humans could ignore those limitations entirely. "We think this is related to your species' origin," Junseok continued. "The archaeological evidence suggests that humans are descendants of beings from a higher dimension. When they came to this universe, they brought the ability to edit reality at its source code level." The implications were staggering. If Junseok was right, humans were not just another species that had evolved reality warping abilities. They were fundamentally different from other forms of life. But the Federation was not waiting for humans to figure out their potential. Across the galaxy, detention orders were being enforced. Human colonies were being evacuated for their own safety. Families were being separated and shipped to research facilities on remote worlds. On New Sol Colony, Hyunwoo Kim watched Federation ships land in the main spaceport. Hundreds of armed soldiers poured out, followed by Korthax reality warpers who could paralyze humans with their mental abilities. "Attention human residents," boomed a voice from the ship's speakers. "By order of the Galactic Federation, all humans displaying anomalous abilities must report for medical evaluation. This is for your own protection and the safety of the galaxy." Hyunwoo had been expecting this. Along with 50 other awakened humans, he had prepared a surprise for the Federation forces. "Remember what Junseok taught us," he said to the group gathered in the colony's main plaza. "Reality is just a suggestion. We get to decide what's real." As the Federation soldiers advanced, the awakened humans joined hands and concentrated. They imagined the colony as absolutely safe, a place where no harm could come to anyone inside its borders. They convinced reality that their home was protected by laws more fundamental than physics. The soldiers' weapons stopped working. Their armor became too heavy to move in. The Korthax reality warpers found their mental abilities simply bouncing off the humans like water off a shield. "What's happening?" demanded the Federation commander over his radio. Our equipment is malfunctioning. No, Hyunwoo called back. Your equipment is working exactly as it should. We've just decided that it should do something different. The Federation forces retreated in confusion, unable to understand how their advanced technology had been neutralized by a group of humans holding hands. Similar scenes played out across human space. On farming worlds, humans convinced the soil that invasion ships were too heavy to land. On mining stations, they decided that Federation equipment would only obey human operators. On trade hubs, they made it so that alien credits had no value while human currency became universally accepted. But not all humans joined the resistance. Many were terrified of their new abilities and willing to trust the Federation's promises of help. They reported to the detention centers voluntarily, hoping that alien scientists could help them control their powers. These humans learned too late that the Federation had no intention of helping them. The research facilities were prisons designed to study human abilities and find ways to suppress them permanently. So Young Park had infiltrated one of these facilities posing as a Federation scientist. What she found there made her sick with rage. Humans were being subjected to painful experiments. Alien researchers were trying to map their neural patterns, hoping to find a way to turn off their abilities permanently. Some subjects had been lobotomized. Others had been infected with new versions of the suppression virus. But the experiments were failing. Human abilities seemed to adapt and evolve in response to suppression attempts. The more the aliens tried to limit them, the stronger they became. It's like they're trying to contain a force of nature, So Young reported to Minho during a secret transmission. Every time they think they've found a limit, humans exceed it. So Young had begun secretly teaching the imprisoned humans how to use their abilities more effectively. She showed them meditation techniques that helped them focus their power. She taught them to work together, combining their abilities in ways that multiplied their strength. "Don't think about what you want to do," she whispered to a group of prisoners during a supposed medical examination. "Think about what should be true. If you decide something should exist, it will exist." The breakthrough came when Ji-Hai Choi, who had been captured during a raid on her station, decided that the prison walls should not be there. The entire detention facility simply ceased to exist, leaving hundreds of confused Federation guards standing in empty space. The escaped humans did not scatter. Instead, they followed Ji-Hai to a region of space that should have been empty but which she had decided was the perfect hiding place. There, floating in the void, was a massive space station that had never been built but which existed because Ji-Hai believed it should. "Welcome to Haven," she told the refugees. "This is our home now." Haven became the first of many human sanctuaries. Using their reality warping abilities, awakened humans created hidden bases in pocket dimensions, on planets that existed only when humans were looking at them, and in regions of space where the laws of physics had been rewritten to favor human survival. The Resistance was no longer just hiding from the Federation. They were building their own reality, separate from the alien-controlled galaxy. But the Federation was adapting too. Unable to capture or suppress humans through conventional means, they began developing new weapons specifically designed to disrupt reality warping abilities. The first test of these weapons came when a Federation fleet attacked Haven. Energy beams designed to stabilize local space-time struck the station, trying to force it back into normal physics. For a moment, Haven flickered and began to fade. The human refugees panicked as their sanctuary started to disappear. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of weakening, the humans' combined will grew stronger. They refused to let their home be destroyed. They decided, collectively and with absolute certainty, that Haven would endure. The Federation's reality-stabilizing weapons overloaded and exploded. Their ships found themselves unable to exist in the same space as the station. One by one, they were forced to retreat as local reality rejected their presence. Minho Seo stood on Haven's observation deck, watching the alien fleet disappear into hyperspace. Around him, awakened humans were celebrating their victory. But Minho was thinking about the future. The Federation would not give up. They would develop new weapons, make new plans, gather more forces. The Resistance was growing stronger, but so was the enemy's desperation. Dong-Hyun Yoon brushed centuries of dust from the stone tablet, his heart racing as ancient symbols became clear. He was an archaeologist who had spent his life studying dead civilizations, But this discovery on the abandoned world of Kepler 442b was beyond anything he had imagined. The symbols were human, but they described technologies that should have been impossible, cities that floated in space without any support, weapons that could destroy stars, beings who could travel between dimensions just by thinking about it. This has to be a mistake, Dong-hyun whispered to himself. But as he explored deeper into the ruins, he found more evidence. Massive structures that defied physics. Architecture that seemed to fold in on itself in impossible ways. And everywhere, carvings that showed humans doing things that only the most powerful aliens could do today. On her transport ship heading to a distant colony, Yoon Song was facing a crisis. A spatial storm had damaged their navigation system, and they were lost in a region of space where normal physics did not work properly. Stars appeared to be in the wrong positions, and gravity pulled in multiple directions at once. The alien crew was panicking. The Korthax captain kept trying to use his reality warping abilities to stabilize their course, but nothing worked. The spatial distortions were too strong. Yoonji closed her eyes and tried to feel the space around them. Instead of seeing the chaos, she sensed underlying patterns. It was like listening to a complicated song and finding the melody hidden inside the noise. Turn. Left by 30 degrees, she told the captain. That will take us into a gravity well, the captain argued. Trust me, Yoonji said. She could feel the safe path like a warm current through dark water. The gravity well is just an illusion. The real space is 3 dimensions to the left. The captain reluctantly followed her directions. Suddenly, the stars snapped back into their correct positions. The spatial storm disappeared, and they found themselves in normal space again. The alien crew stared at Yoonji in amazement. She had navigated through impossible conditions using abilities they did not understand. Space-time manipulation was supposed to be the most advanced form of reality warping, something only the luminals could master. Back on the Federation capital, Taemin Lee was working late in his office when Woo Jin Kang burst through the door. Woo Jin had been a security officer on a human colony when extremist aliens attacked. He had defended the colonists using abilities he did not know he possessed. They tried to kill everyone, Woo Jin said, still shaken by the experience. The attackers had energy weapons and combat armor, but when I saw the children screaming, something inside me just awakened. Woo Jin described how he had created shields of solid light that blocked energy blasts. He had moved faster than should be possible, disarming attackers before they could react. Most shocking of all, he had convinced their weapons to stop working just by believing they would not fire. It wasn't like the alien abilities I've seen, Woo Jin explained. They manipulate existing things, but I felt like I was changing the rules themselves. Like I was telling reality what it should be instead of asking it nicely. Taemin nodded grimly. He had been collecting similar reports from across human space. The pattern was becoming clear. Human abilities were not just emerging randomly. They appeared strongest when humans were threatened or when they needed to protect others. Meanwhile, So Young Park had made a breakthrough in her genetic research. Working with samples from dozens of awakened humans, she had identified the exact mechanism that had suppressed their abilities. It's a viral modification, she told Hyunwoo during a secure communication. Someone introduced a genetic virus into the human population about 800 years ago. Right around the time humans first made contact with the Federation, the virus had been incredibly subtle. Instead of killing or obviously harming humans, it had simply turned off specific genes, the genes that controlled reality warping abilities. Over generations, as the virus spread through the human population, these abilities had been completely suppressed. But why is it failing now? Hyunwoo asked. Because it was designed to be temporary, So Young replied. Whoever created it knew that permanent genetic modifications would eventually be discovered. So they made it degrade over time. After 8 centuries, it's finally breaking down. The implications were terrifying. Someone had deliberately crippled humanity's entire species. They had stolen abilities that should have been humanity's birthright. And they had done it so smoothly that humans had never even known what they had lost. Dong-hyun's archaeological discoveries supported So Young's genetic research. He had found evidence of an ancient human civilization that spanned multiple galaxies. These humans had not just used reality warping abilities. They had been masters of it. According to the records he translated, ancient humans could create pocket universes for storage. They could terraform planets by imagining them as habitable. They could travel instantaneously across any distance by deciding that space was not an obstacle. Most shocking of all, they could resurrect the dead by convincing reality that death was just a temporary condition. We weren't primitive when we met the Federation, Dong-hyun reported to Tae-min. We were the most advanced species in the galaxy, maybe in the universe. But if humans had been so powerful, why had they allowed themselves to be suppressed? Dong-hyun found the answer in the final set of records he discovered. The ancient humans had been peaceful. When they encountered the 5 species that would later form the Federation, humans had tried to share their knowledge. They had offered to teach reality warping to other species, believing that a galaxy where everyone had these abilities would be better for all. The alien species had pretended to be grateful. They had studied human abilities carefully, learning everything they could. But secretly they had been developing the genetic virus. They knew they could never match human potential, so they decided to eliminate it instead. The attack had been swift and devastating. The virus had been introduced through trade goods and diplomatic gifts. Within 50 years, human abilities had begun to fade. Within 200 years, they were completely gone. Humans forgot they had ever been anything more than clever mammals. The Federation had then rewritten history. They portrayed themselves as the ancient powers and humans as a young species that had recently achieved space travel. They gave humans the most dangerous jobs and treated them as expendable workers. For 600 years, the deception had worked perfectly, but now the virus was failing, and humans were remembering who they truly were. HFY Choi had become something of a celebrity among awakened humans. As the first documented case, she had been studied by So Young and interviewed by Tae-min. But she was struggling with the growing power inside her. "I fixed a broken fusion reactor yesterday," she told Hyunwoo. "Not with tools. I just looked at it and decided it should work properly. The reactor redesigned itself to be more efficient." "That's incredible," Hyunwoo said. "It's terrifying," Ji-hee replied. "I'm changing things just by thinking about them. What if I accidentally think something dangerous? What if I imagine someone getting hurt?" Hyunwoo understood her fear. His own abilities were growing stronger every day. He had started by moving rocks, but now he could reshape matter at the molecular level. He had built structures that should have collapsed under their own weight, but they stood firm because he believed they would. Across human space, others were having similar experiences. A farmer could make crops grow in barren soil by imagining fertile fields. A doctor could heal injuries by convincing the body to repair itself instantly. A teacher could help students learn by making knowledge flow directly from mind to mind. But the alien governments were starting to notice. Reports of human anomalies were becoming too numerous to ignore. The Federation Council called emergency sessions to discuss what they called the human mutation crisis. Tae-min stood before the council once again, but this time he had evidence they could not dismiss. He presented Dong-hyun's archaeological findings, So Young's genetic analysis, and documented proof of the viral suppression. "You deliberately crippled our species," he said, his voice calm but filled with steel. "You stole our heritage and enslaved us for 8 centuries. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Valari delegates' crystal form flickered with nervous energy. The Nethrim began to swirl more rapidly. "These accusations are absurd," the Korthax representative hissed. "Humans are a young species with delusions of grandeur." "Then explain this," Tae-min said, projecting an image of an ancient human city that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. "This structure was built by humans 3,000 years ago. Your species were still figuring out fire." The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the alien powers had no response to human evidence. But their silence spoke volumes. They had been caught in a lie that had lasted nearly a millennium. And now, with human abilities returning stronger than ever, they faced a terrible question. What would humanity do when it fully remembered its power? HFY Choi wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the broken life support unit. The air recycling system had failed again, and without it, everyone on mining station Beta 7 would be dead within 6 hours. She had been trying to fix it for 3 hours already, but nothing worked. "Come on, please work," she whispered to the machine, pressing her hands against its metal surface. She closed her eyes and imagined the broken parts coming together, working perfectly like they were supposed to. When she opened her eyes, the machine was humming quietly. All the warning lights had turned green. HFY stepped back in confusion. She looked at her tools scattered on the floor. She had not used any of them. The repair should have taken days with new parts that they did not have. But somehow the machine was working perfectly. "How did you fix it so fast?" asked Hyunwoo Kim, walking into the maintenance room. He was the head engineer and had been checking on her progress every hour. I'm not sure," Ji-hye said. "It just started working." Hyunwoo examined the machine carefully. The broken parts had somehow fused together in ways that should not be possible. The metal looked like it had grown back together naturally. He had never seen anything like it. 3 weeks later, something similar happened to Hyunwoo himself. A cave-in had trapped 5 miners deep underground. Heavy rocks blocked the tunnel, and their mining equipment could not move them. The trapped miners had only 2 hours of air left. Hyunwoo stood in front of the blocked tunnel, feeling desperate. He thought about the miners dying behind those rocks. He imagined a protective barrier around them, keeping them safe. Suddenly, he felt something strange in his mind, like a door opening. "Get back," he shouted to the other workers. He raised his hands toward the rocks, and somehow he knew what to do. A shimmering wall of energy appeared between the rocks and the trapped miners. The rocks could not fall any further. Then one by one, the heavy stones began to move aside on their own. The other miners stared at Hyunwoo in shock. Humans were not supposed to be able to do things like that. Only the 5 alien races that ruled the galaxy had special powers. Humans were just workers, good for manual labor and simple tasks. Far away on the research ship Harmony, So-Young Park was studying alien DNA samples when she made a discovery that changed everything. She had been comparing human genetic codes with those of the reality warpers, the alien species who could bend the laws of physics with their minds. "This can't be right," she said to herself, looking at her computer screen. The results showed that humans had genetic markers very similar to those found in reality warpers. But these markers were turned off, like switches that had been flipped to the off position. So-Young ran the tests again and again. The results were always the same. Humans had the genetic potential for reality warping abilities, but something was preventing these genes from working. It was as if someone had deliberately shut them down. She sent her findings to Taemin Lee, a human diplomat working at the Federation capital. Taemin had been collecting reports of strange incidents involving humans across the galaxy. Workers lifting impossible weights, sick people healing instantly, machines fixing themselves when humans touched them. The alien governments dismissed these reports. The Volari, crystalline beings who could reshape matter with their thoughts, said humans were just imagining things. The gaseous Nethrim, who could phase through solid objects, claimed humans were lying to get attention. The reptilian Korthax, the insectoid Zephyrians, and the energy-based Luminals all agreed that humans could never develop real abilities. "Humans have been tested for centuries," declared Vorthak, the Korthax representative. "They show no aptitude for essence manipulation. These are just accidents and coincidences." But the incidents kept happening. On a transport ship heading to the outer colonies, a human named Yoonji Song somehow guided the vessel through a dangerous asteroid field while the navigation computer was broken. She said she could feel the safe path through the rocks. On a farming world, a human child made dead crops grow back to life by singing to them. On a trading station, a human merchant convinced broken machinery to work just by talking to it nicely. Taemin gathered all these reports and presented them to the Federation Council. The alien leaders sat in their floating chairs, looking down at him with expressions ranging from boredom to annoyance. "Honored representatives," Taemin said, "we have documented over 300 cases of humans displaying reality warping abilities in the past 6 months. We request permission to study this phenomenon officially." The luminal representative flickered with what might have been laughter. "Humans developing abilities? Impossible. Your species lacks the necessary neural complexity." "But the evidence," Taemin began. "The evidence is flawed," interrupted the Nethrim delegate, its gaseous form swirling dismissively. "Humans have always been prone to fantasy and self-deception." The Zephyrian clicked its mandibles. "We have monitored human development for 200 years. If you possessed abilities, we would have detected them long ago." Taemin felt frustrated but not surprised. The alien species had always treated humans as inferior. They gave humans the hardest, most dangerous jobs and paid them the least. Humans were allowed in the Federation, but only as workers and servants. Back on mining station Beta 7, Ji-hye was having more strange experiences. When the food replicator broke down, She fixed it by imagining the meals the hungry workers needed. When the artificial gravity failed, she somehow kept everyone's feet on the ground, just by believing they should stay there. Other humans on the station began showing similar abilities. A maintenance worker named Woojin Kang found he could strengthen metal just by touching it. A communications officer realized she could boost signal strength by concentrating on the messages. Hyunwoo organized secret meetings where they could talk about what was happening to them. They were all afraid. Humans who caused trouble often disappeared. The Federation said they were relocated to other jobs, but no one ever heard from them again. "We need to be careful," Hyunwoo warned the group. "If the aliens think we're becoming dangerous, they might decide we're not worth keeping around." But it was too late to hide what was happening. The abilities were spreading, getting stronger. Humans across the galaxy were beginning to wake up to powers they never knew they had. So Young's research had revealed something even more shocking. The genetic switches that turned off human abilities had not occurred naturally. Someone had put them there on purpose. The evidence suggested that humans had once been incredibly powerful, perhaps more powerful than any of the current galactic rulers. The question was, who had suppressed humanity's abilities, and why? And now that those abilities were returning, what would happen when the galaxy's rulers realized the truth? In her small laboratory, So Young stared at the genetic data and felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity was not evolving new abilities. They were remembering old ones. And if the genetic evidence was correct, when humans fully awakened, they would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The age of human servitude was ending. What would take its place?